Today I'd like to talk about the four cardinal virtues. The word or the expression cardinal virtue is a direct translation of the Latin. The word cardinal means hinge, and the word virtue means strength. So I'm really talking about the four hinge strengths. And these are strengths that everybody has to have to flourish as an adult in the human community. And there's, as I say, there are four of them: temperance, fortitude, justice, and prudence. And they go all the way back to Socrates, a pre-Christian Greek philosopher. He passed it on to Plato. Plato passed it on to Aristotle. It found its way into the Greek version of the Old Testament and the wisdom literature. There's a mention of the four cardinal virtues. And Thomas Aquinas had a great deal to say about it in the Middle Ages. And it's something that I use in my work, and I find it very useful. Today, I want to talk about the virtue of prudence. And prudence has a bad name among people. Usually when we say somebody is being prudent or somebody wasn't prudent, what we're referring to is cautiousness. We're saying you have to be prudent means you have to be cautious and timid and not taking any risks. But that isn't really the meaning of prudent. A better way of understanding, translating the Latin word for prudence, which is prudentia, is being provident or foresighted. And it's also translated as practical wisdom, or it's know-how. A person who is prudent knows how to do a virtuous thing in the right way and in the right measure. So it isn't concerned with what to do, it's concerned with how to do it. A prudent person has know-how. You get prudence from experience largely. And he also knows how things are, the way things really are. He doesn't kid himself into thinking things are the way they really aren't in order to do what he wants to do. Now, to give you an example of prudence that is very practical for parents, it's how do you educate your children about human sexuality? Well, we know that the virtue of justice says that your children are owed that education. You owe them that education. So to treat them justly, you have to give them that education. You may have to forego some pleasures in order to spend time doing that. That would involve temperance. And it may be embarrassing or awkward or difficult for you to do this. It may be something you don't do easily. You may have to do some reading up on the subject so that you know what to tell your child. And that all takes fortitude. But if you don't have prudence, you don't have virtue. And your effort at teaching your children about human sexuality won't be virtuous. In order for it to be virtuous, it has to be done at the right time and in the right measure. Prudence is all about timing and measure. So, for example, if your 4-year-old child runs up to you and says, "Daddy, where did I come from?" you don't pull out biological charts of sexual organs and start explaining every little detail. That's doing too much too soon. On the other hand, if your daughter comes to you on her wedding night and says, "Where do babies come from?" and she doesn't know, you've waited too long and you've told her too little. So the virtue of prudence then comes in there in having know-how. The prudent person will know, when is the right time to talk to my children about this? How much should I tell them now, and how much? And that's the virtue. That's part of the virtue of prudence. A person is prudent who is in touch with reality. You have to know what a 4-year-old is capable of understanding. You have to have a correct understanding of that. You can't just go by what you wish a 4-year-old could do. You have to go by what a 4-year-old actually can understand. So you have to be objective. You have to learn from mistakes. If you told one of your children something too soon, you need to accurately remember that. even if it's difficult to remember it because it's humbling to remember that you made a mistake. You have to learn from that mistake by remembering it accurately. Another virtue or strength that a person has to have in order to have the strength of prudence is what's called docility. And that's basically a willingness to learn. A person isn't prudent if he doesn't know the difference between what he knows and what he doesn't know. When you know something, you simply do it prudently. But if you don't know something, then you need to be able to be taught. And that means you need to seek wise counsel. So a prudent man is a man who will seek wise counsel if he doesn't know something. In the case of a father who says, I don't know where to begin about sex education with my sons, for example, well, he then is able to say, I will go to X, some source that is a wise source and that can instruct and help that father figure out how to give sex education to his children wisely. A person who is lacking in prudence will think he knows everything, doesn't need to learn anything from anyone, and will find it too much to have to go to someone and say, I don't know how to do this. Would you please teach me how to do it and learn how to do it? It's been my experience that women are better at doing that than men are. When women don't know something, they very easily can go to another person and say, show me how to do this. I don't know for a fact, but I'll bet that if I ask my daughter about the Facebook websites, that there are many more of women who advise one another than there are of men who advise one another. If a husband and wife are in a strange city driving around and they're lost, the wife is the one who will keep pressing him to stop and get directions. And he will keep insisting that he can find his way if he just keeps driving. So women tend to see seeking information from other people as a way of connecting. You know something, I don't know something. When you teach me, then we both know it and we're connected. We men tend to see it as, if I go to you and ask for advice about something, you know something, I don't know something, you're one up and I'm one down. And so it's hierarchical. And so the idea is to avoid that one down position. So we find it very hard to do that. But that's a very important component or prerequisite for prudence. The prudent person, prudence has two steps. First of all, you size up the situation. That's more the intellect working. And you say, what is the situation? What needs to be done here? And then what's the best way to do it? What's the best amount of time to spend on it, and so forth. And then you go to the will. You execute the decision. You make a decision. Okay, I will tell my daughter this as my answer to her question, and I won't tell her that or that. And you make the decision. That's what I'm going to do. And then you do it. There's a special perfection of prudence, and that's being able to make wisely a snap decision when something unforeseen presents itself. And if you can do that, then you've got the perfection of prudence. So suddenly your house bursts into flame and you have 7 children in the house. You figure, what's the first thing I have to do? Okay. A person who has the perfection of prudence can make a snap decision. He can size the thing up in a flash, decide wisely and objectively what the best thing is to do first, and then do it. So for tonight, that's what we'll talk about as far as prudence goes. Next time I'll talk about one of the other hinge strengths. And again, I want to remind you that if you're interested in getting psychological counseling from me, just get on my website, CatholicPsychConsult.com, and you see what you have to do to get in touch with me.